Hey, welcome to Backstory. My name's Andrew Metal. Backstory is a show where we interview different entrepreneurs and not just focus on their success, but we learn about their backstory. Today we're going to be talking to Ben Gillenwater. He has created an app that has 3 million plus downloads, and he does a bunch of different things. We're going to learn a little bit about his story. Ben, you created an app that has 3 million plus downloads. You have another amazing company that we're going to talk about.
Yep.
And you're like the technical jack of all trades. You're like MacGyver meets Zuckerberg. That's when you went full-fledged entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Forget the corporate stuff.
Yep.
Okay, so talk to us.
So that's actually part of the reason. So I actually volunteered to be laid off at BlackBerry too. Turns out that's a thing. I didn't know that would become my thing. But it just, we all saw where that business was going, and already people were getting like massive layoffs and all this kind of stuff. I had started to think about Menu Point at that time, and before I left BlackBerry, I was already interviewing. At the time, I thought I was going to sell it to bars.
Yeah, and tell us again what Menu Point is.
So Menu Point is a system that it's like a food and beverage ordering system for hotels.
Right.
So if you're chilling out at the pool in Hawaii and a waiter or waitress hasn't come around in a little bit and you want to order a drink or order a burger or whatever, you can do that, and then you can select like what chair you're sitting in, and then you get a little notification on your phone that's like, hey, yep, we received your order, and then 10 minutes later they bring it out to you.
Right. So
it's like a Grubhub or an E24 on site.
Right.
Like
for sure.
Built into the hotel kind of thing. So now I sell it to hotels, but at the time I thought I was going to be selling it to bars.
Okay.
So I was already interviewing bar owners, and I was like, hey, and I showed them prototypes like, hey, if I built this, would you want it? And they all said yes.
And so that was what year? 2000.
That was in 2013.
13?
Yeah,
okay.
Maybe early 2013. I might have even been prototyping it late 2012.
Okay, and how were you prototyping? Like, what were you doing? What tools were you using? How did you start the process? Okay, how did you come up with the idea, and then how did you start the process of...
That's a good question. So, a friend of mine in Singapore sings in a cover band. And it's awesome. It's all like 90s rock kind of stuff, and some classic rock too. So I'd go watch her almost every Friday night in Singapore, and dude, her band would pack this place.
Yeah.
Like you for sure you couldn't get a table, and at the very best, if you even got to see the stage, you'd just be like shoulder to shoulder, crammed in, right? But you look around, and everybody's drinks are empty.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, hold on. The reason that the bar has them doing this is to sell more drinks, but there's nobody going around taking orders.
Right.
Wait staff in Singapore is kind of famous for being just not a good experience. Like, service is kind of a mixed bag.
Right.
So that was kind of part of the deal, but I was like, okay. At the time, it was, like 2012, let's say. It's like, there's got to be an app, right? So I started looking on my phone. And I had an Android phone, sort of in addition to my BlackBerry.
Yeah.
And there's nothing out there. So I was like, that's crazy. So I started doing research. Dude, there's nothing that does this, right? So I'm like, come on, that's so weird. So, all right, well. So I just did like wireframes. Some of it just drawn on paper. And then Balsamic was the fancy version.
Okay.
After I started drawing it on paper.
So you drew it out, came up with the idea, drew it out.
Yeah.
Like how many screens did you draw out? 10, 20, 5?
5 or 10.
Okay, and then you took those and transferred them over to Balsamic?
Yeah.
Started wireframing?
Yeah, and then I would show the Balsamic wireframes. I'd just go into bars and just be like, hey, can I talk to the manager?
Yeah.
Which is crazy because now when I have something to sell, if you just walk into a bar and say, can I talk to the manager? It's an immediate no.
Yeah.
But at the time, it made it look so easy because they all said yes.
Okay, so you had these wireframes.
Yeah, so I just walked in
with your laptop?
It was either laptop or phone. Okay. I can't remember which one I showed it. I might have shown him on the phone so that it would be more natural.
Right.
And just like, look, here's the problem I'm trying to solve. I'd give him the little background. Because one of the things I learned from my manager at BlackBerry was, and he would just hammer this into the whole team, what problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah.
Because human nature is to go solution first.
Right.
But really, the way to to introduce an idea to somebody is problem first.
I agree.
So I used that. I learned from that, and I used that in my pitching these prototypes to the bar managers.
Right.
I would lay out the foundation of like, hey, here's the problem that I see as a consumer. Do you agree with the problem?
Right.
Which was part of what I learned at BlackBerry. And they all were like, oh yeah, totally, it's a big problem. Okay, cool. So since we agree on the problem, here's a solution. What do you think about my solution? And would you use it if it was real? And they all said, yeah, that's rad, and just let me know when it's done.
Yeah.
So when BlackBerry started to take a downturn, I was like, all right, well, I've been saving up money. I'll just take a shot at it.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
Okay.
You know?
So, and you validated. I mean, you went around, validated the idea. You had an idea, took it out, showed an actual MVP or product of some sort.
Yeah.
Got, I guess, validation from the people you thought were going to be your target audience, which later changed.
Yeah.
But so then at that point, now you weren't coding, you weren't technical, right?
Correct. So at Tyco, I was supposed to do a little bit of coding as part of my job, and I was terrible at. Otherwise, I'm not a programmer.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, I was sort of like, I became like the product manager basically.
Right.
For ManyPoint.
And so, how did you get from balsamic wireframes to then actual application?
So I had been trying to hire developers via, I forget what Upwork used to be called, Elance and Odesk and stuff, since like 2007.
Okay, right.
And just failing miserably at every turn.
Yeah.
I'd always have these little ideas, like I wanted to make like a time zone app for Blackberries back in the day. Spent a couple grand. Nothing came out of it. So basically, I've learned along the way of like how to find the good people on Elance or on Odesk, and
your hiring hack.
Yeah,
you're gonna share it with us.
Yeah. So I think that the way to like, you can't really find out if you're not a developer yourself. The only real way to like test a new developer is to have them build something.
Yeah.
Completely. To see like, do we communicate well together? Do they build am I able to tell them what my vision is and they in turn able to build it? Can I give them designs? Because I like to do design first.
Right.
And I can talk a little bit more about that, but in short, like if I give them a set of designs, can they build that and then turn it around, and is it going to look accurate? Is it going to function as we had discussed, and this kind of stuff? So what I would do is what I still do is I give a new developer, a small project that they can build to completion.
Right.
So I built this thing called Open Tap Water, or I had the developers I was talking to build this thing called Open Tap Water, because like if you go around to some places in Singapore, and this is all over the world, and you order a meal, let's say, and you want a glass of water, they'll be like, oh, we don't sell we don't give tap water, we only sell bottled water. Mm. Or no, they would say like, we don't have tap water.
Right.
And I'd be like, yeah, you do. Just put it in a cup. I don't want to buy bottled water. That's wasteful. Yeah. Long story short, so I like created this like database of like asshole companies. But it was a simple product, you know. It was a simple concept. And so I hired a couple guys to build that.
So it was web or mobile?
Web.
Okay.
And then this one guy that I built it like really well, and it was like super easy to work with him. He still works with me to this day.
Nice.
He's still my lead developer on ManyPoint.
Nice.
And so yeah, it's just like a test project basically.
So you found talent on Elance or Odesk or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Had them kind of you have your hiring process, and then you also have like specifications that you look for when you're actually posting a job to those different freelance sites, right?
Yeah, and you know what? I take an untraditional approach to that. So Guy Kawasaki, who was marketing guy for Apple back in the day, and he has this awesome template that I like that basically is a good way to outline like why you want to build something and like what your sort of business hypothesis is behind it. And so my style has always been like, I always enjoy transparency in a business environment. So I would share the business idea and like the business reasons with whatever developers I'm working with and whatever designers I'm working with, in addition to like, here's what I expect it to do and why.
Right.
and here's what I wanted out of like version 1. Here's the sort of MVP kind of lean startup style, as small and crappy as it can possibly be just to get it done.
Right.
And give the developer and the designer as much leeway as possible to just do their thing and not micromanage them and not tell them down to the specific nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
I try to keep it as high level as I possibly can, and it's worked out really well. And my thing is in the long term, it provides each team member with a sense of ownership.
Yeah.
Because they're making decisions.
Right.
That define the way that the business effectively goes based on the product, and that's what I want.
Cool.
And so that's just my personal style thing. So that's the way that I like to be treated. Because if I don't want to tell them how to do their job, right? I just want to tell them like, hey, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's why.
Right.
Help me do that.
Right. Whatever path it takes for you to get there.
Yeah.
This is the destination.
Yeah.
These are the core features we need.
Dude, because
there's a million ways to solve one problem.
Yeah, and like some developers would be like, well, what language do you want to use?
Yeah.
Don't care.
Which do you prefer?
Yeah. What type of database do you want to use? I don't know. Whatever you want.
Yeah.
What do I care?
Yeah.
Is it going to be, potentially scalable in the future, which is probably a shitty question because everybody thinks like, oh, dude, how am I going to handle like a million simultaneous sessions?
10 billion downloads.
That's not even a thing.
Right.
Chances are it's not even going to happen.
Right.
I mean, don't build something that can't handle more than 10.
Yeah.
But that's everything.
Yeah.
So the guy that was working with me on building ManyPoint, he was like, well, what if we use Node and Mongo? And I was like, well, okay, how do we turn that into a mobile app or whatever? And he proposed some ideas and it made sense. And we tried it, we prototyped it. And I'm like, yeah, man, just, do your thing.
Cool. And so you took the designs, found your team, developed the app.
Yeah.
And then you started to go out and pitch bars again. Now, were you generating revenue at that point or no?
No, not at all.
Nothing.
Not at all.
And then what happened with the bars? And because eventually I want to get to how did you get the 3 million downloads and some ideas and tips you have. But I want to kind of lead up to that point.
Yeah. Well, so the 3 million downloads is on PackPoint.
Right. Okay. And this is ManyPoint.
Yeah. And so when I left BlackBerry, I moved to Manila just to kind of keep my costs down because Singapore is very expensive to rent an apartment.
Yeah.
Like the rest of it's not that bad, but dude, rent is crazy expensive.
Yeah.
So I moved to Manila. And I got bored waiting for ManyPoint sort of version 1, so I was like, let me start another project. And I knew I might need more developers, so I started building PackPoint.
Okay.
Sort of simultaneously.
Right.
Which is kind of crazy and like everybody.
And explain what PackPoint is. I know what it is. But
PackPoint is a travel app, so it just tells you what to pack based on your destination, based on the length of your trip, and it checks the weather for where you're going. Kind of tells you. If it's going to be hot, it tells you to bring shorts. If it's going to be cold, it tells you to bring a light jacket or a heavy jacket. Or that's a simple version. It does more than that, but it basically has like a little dynamic like packing list. I just built it for myself. I like everything I build solves my own problems.
Yeah.
Which so far like super first world. Hey, I'm sitting in a pool at a fancy hotel and I'm thirsty. Like, how dare you not have an app for me?
Yeah.
Or traveling full time basically from 2004 till 2013.
Yeah.
Always packing a bag and unpacking a bag and repacking a bag, and I would use Evernote. So I just took my process in my head and just was like, oh, that could be made into Logic.
Yeah.
Hired a designer, had somebody build it out.
Okay, so you had ManyPoint being developed.
Yeah.
Created PackPoint now. Did you use the same team? Or you had a new team do the development?
Different team.
Okay, and you just did that for yourself?
Yeah.
And then, so while that's being developed, all of a sudden, something big happens, right? You get some exposure. So can you tell us a little bit about how PackPoint just kind of like became a viral sensation?
Yeah. And I had a bit of an unfair advantage because I was sponsoring research while I was at BlackBerry into like why are certain apps successful?
Sure, yeah.
And why are others not? And the
cool.
research that I sponsored was done right before I left, and literally nobody ever saw it except for me. So I was like,
"That's awesome!
All right, I'm going to use that for myself."
Yeah.
Or the out.
Where's that research? You still have it?
Yeah, it's on my hard drive. And like one of the big pieces was that like design is the most important thing,
For sure.
user experience, like a simple interface, all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, so basically, like, I kind of took my background in helping other developers be successful in an app store, and tried to set myself up with something attractive, which in the form of PackPoint, because PackPoint's a consumer app.
Right.
ManyPoint's a business app.
Right.
So it's from a marketing perspective.
Much broader market.
Yeah.
PackPoint.
Exactly. So PackPoint is like, downloads are an important metric.
Right.
ManyPoint is more like how many businesses are subscribing to ManyPoint versus downloads.
Revenue.
So PackPoint, yeah, like somehow Lifehacker picked it up. It was on Android first, and native Android, and then we built native iPhone after that. Somehow Lifehacker picked it up when it was on Android only.
Okay.
No idea how they found it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even at that time, in 2013, I mean, there's however many millions or tens of millions of apps in the Play Store.
Yeah, there was a peak time for app development.
Yeah. Somehow they uncovered it, they found it, and they wrote a positive review. Got a bunch more downloads on Android. And then the iPhone version came out in like June or July of 2013.
Mm-hmm.
The first week it was out, Apple put it on the front page of the App Store for a week globally. Which
Crazy.
And my designer that I hired for PackPoint was just like, oh yeah, I've had that before. Like, she's like, no big deal. That's what I do. Kind of thing. I was like, well, damn, like, this is awesome.
And so how many downloads did that?
It was like 100,000 a day.
Wow.
Kind of thing. I was using a Google Maps API, and all of a sudden, like, I came within a hair of exceeding the API threshold, which would have broken the whole app.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare, man. And I tried to ask Google to like increase my API thing, and they kind of just told me to fuck off.
Yeah.
I was like, but then, like, once you're on the front page of the App Store, then, like, dude, the media coverage globally, like, crazy.
Yeah.
Granted, it's a small thing because there's no front page New York Times,
right.
But there's coverage, and so then now it's like I did a lot of App Store optimization, so making sure that I had the right keywords in the description and the right title and the right screenshots and all this kind of stuff, so that after that spike came, I could maintain an organic number of downloads. Like, I've never done paid downloads.
Yeah.
And now I've got.
That's awesome.
I don't know. Right now, it's like there's not really any major coverage going on. It's just kind of chilling. Probably does like 40,000 downloads a month.
Wow.
And I
monetize.
Yeah, so I monetize like 1% of those probably with like an in-app upgrade.
Okay.
The app sort of just pays the bills.
Yeah, that's great. So it's just reoccurring. Amazing. I mean, it's just you're not doing anything.
It's a dream. It's like this automated machine.
Yeah. And
then I've had travel brands reach out to me and want to do deals together because they would see the app. So I did a deal with Sheraton Hotels last year.
Nice.
So Sheraton Asia, funny enough, based out of Singapore, total coincidence, put their brand on PackPoint for 6 months.
Nice.
So it was called PackPoint by Sheraton.
Nice.
And they're like, hey, look, put our name on it and we'll pay you to do that. And they paid me like pretty reasonably. Then they got acquired by Marriott, so the deal, the renewal didn't happen because the whole team got laid off.
Yeah.
And then I've had, I won't say the brands because I don't know if they're sensitive to it, but I've had other major travel brands, like every few months I'll get like a major brand reach out to me.
Can you talk dollar-wise, like what are they kind of giving you?
Like high 4 figures a month.
Okay, nice, dude. That's awesome.
To stamp a brand on it, and I'm like, okay. And
so before we end, tell us a little bit more about ManyPoint now.
Yeah, so ManyPoint's become interesting because so now I've got Hilton, Marriott, Starwood, which is now part of Marriott, and then some other smaller kind of local brands using it. It's amazing. Like, every day I see all these orders being placed constantly. And there's, tens of thousands of dollars of revenue going through it, which is small, but it's still a relatively small system. So we just split ManyPoint into a couple of separate apps. So there's ManyPoint and now Patient Order. Shares the same code base but different brand. So ManyPoint's for hotels and then Patient Orders for weed.
Right.
It's like a Starbucks app for weed.
Right.
Only in Southern California, and you can go in there and order pick your strain, pick your edible, whatever, and then they give you like a confirmation code and you go pick it up. And that was kind of cool.
So the user goes, picks it from the dispensary,
Yeah.
and it's just done.
Yeah, and then they pay when
Starbucks.
they get there, because the marijuana industry still, like, federally
Yeah.
is illegal, so banks, you know, you can't have a bank account if you're a dispensary.
Got it.
So while there's a payment mechanism technically available in the app, it's basically you just pay your cash when you get there.
Cool.
Pick it up, give your cash, out you go, because there's like a decent line at dispensaries.
Yeah.
Like, if you
It's
go,
a huge
you know,
industry right now.
Oh, dude.
Everyone's jumping
Massive,
into weed.
man.
So
Yeah.
you're in California. You're gonna scale, obviously.
Ideally, yeah.
What's that look like, or do you have a plan, or just kind of depends on demand?
We have a plan, you know, aka wild guess,
Yeah.
of how to attract interest, but it's tough, man, because dispensary owners are still very secretive.
Yeah, for sure.
The even the licensed dispensaries, which most of them, as it turns out, are unlicensed.
Oh wow.
Really weird. Like in Santa Ana, for example, right here in the LA area, there's a ton of dispensaries, and you go on Weed Maps or Leaf, and you'll see a whole bunch of dispensaries. Most of them, the majority, are not legal. And so what they do is they get busted, and then they just move across the street,
Yeah.
and then the next day they're back in business.
Oh, that's crazy.
And they just do that. That's what they do. And then you have the licensed ones, which are in there, and they're like the high dollar, sort of fancier ones.
Sure.
Long story short, the dispensary owners are hiding in the shadows.
Yeah.
A lot of employees at these dispensaries, they don't even know who the owners are.
Yeah.
They sometimes they don't even know the last name of the manager. Like, they might be like, oh, Julie's the person you want to talk to. Turns
Yeah.
out Julie is like a shift manager. She might not even know the true identity of her boss.
Yeah.
And so trying to sell
It's
to a
gray
decision
area.
maker
Yeah.
is crazy.
So that's hard.
It's
So
hard,
that's,
man. Yeah.
That's a barrier to scalability, I guess. right?
Massive barrier. So
So-
you have to have an industry insider, basically, somebody that
Yeah.
has a network,
For sure.
you know?
So that's patient order,
Yeah.
and then what's going on with Menu Point now?
So Menu Point, now the plan all along has been to insert ourselves into some major brands in a small way to prove out our hypotheses of, like, do the guests at the hotels care? Turns out they do. Do the managers at the hotels care? Turns out they do.
Nice.
Do the staff at the hotels, are they willing to use this thing? I mean, anytime you ask a waiter or waitress to, like, do an additional thing, they're just like, hey, like, I'm already busy enough.
Yeah.
So are they stoked on it? Turns out they are, because it makes them more efficient, and
Right.
it helps them do their job. So now we're talking to the corporate levels, trying to get in there, being like, hey, look, we've got an install base already in your brand. You should check it out.
Yeah.
Let's go do a larger scale thing. So that's kind of where we're at right now,
Nice.
and we're having positive conversations. And it turns out that the timing's kind of crazy, because, like, there's some of the big brands are actually working on this actively internally already.
Nice.
Just, we're super, like, beta mode.
Right.
So we're trying to be a part of that,
Oh, very cool.
and that's the dream, really, is to run a relatively low overhead, lightweight, efficient business that operates in a big way. Like, externally seems like, wow, like, this is rad. It just
Huge.
works in all these places, but
Yeah.
I'm inspired by the guys at 37 Signals and
Yeah,
Base
yeah.
Camp and stuff. Of,
Jason
like,
Fried.
Jason Fried is a huge inspiration to me since day
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Which is like, keep it lightweight, be efficient, be smart, don't think you know the future,
Right.
test your hypotheses.
For sure.
Between him and the Lean Startup
Yeah.
book, like, massive inspirations for me.
Yeah. He's like pre-Eric Reese. He was like,
Yeah, those two
Yeah,
guys,
Jason Fried's awesome.
I'm all about it.
cool.
So
Awesome.
yeah.
So where can we find you online? You have a website. What are some web links?
Yeah, so you've got menupoint.net, patientorder.net. All the .coms are taken, man. Like,
Yeah.
packpnt.com, because packpoint.com. So packpnt.com, those are the three
Okay.
kind of major products.
Cool.
Yeah, so those are the main places, and definitely happy for people to check them out.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Cool.